Welcome to G's Backstage Pass. Today's guest is an author, a playwright, and a storyteller. Ladies and gentlemen, Ellen Byerrum.
Hello. Thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on. So, who is Ellen Byerrum?
Oh dear. I think that would actually change with whom with ev- sorry, whatever I'm doing, I suppose. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
playwright, I'm a mystery writer, I was a reporter.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I love stories. Love learning about people, and I think everybody has a good story, to tell the truth. And I don't know why, but it reminds me of when I was a reporter in my first job,
Mm-hmm.
and another reporter, she said, "You have all the best stories," and I thought, well, I'm the one who says yes to stories. It's like one day I was walking down the street in this horrible town I will call Sagebrush, Colorado, and
Okay.
the local real estate developer came up and stopped his car and said, "We got a massage parlor in town." And this wasn't, one of those great massages that you get and that I love. This was one of those oldie timey massage parlors with a certain sullied reputation.
Oh,
And I said,
Lord.
"Sure." And we drove to the out in the sagebrush, and there was this building, and we had to crawl in and out of the window to get to the massage parlor. So um, that's why I had the best stories, because I would just go, sure, sure, I want to see that. Sure, I want to know these people.
Y-
Um,
You
you
just
know,
manifest them. You just go out in the stories and they appear.
well, it was a crazy, crazy town. Yeah.
So let's talk about the creative side. Like you said, you wear so many hats when you're, an author and a playwright and a journalist and everything. How do you find the creative side?
I think what I'd like to say is, how do you hide from it? But
Ooh.
no, I think it's everywhere. Story ideas are everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
and even when you can't get away from them, you might dream story ideas. My latest book is coming out of a dream that I had. I
Oh,
basically
wow.
dreamt the first chapter, and it stayed with me, and it just was so vivid, and I could hear it, and I could feel it, and it just wouldn't let me alone. And so that's kind of how it goes. But stories are everywhere. You just have to open your eyes and see them. I mean, sometimes you have to say no, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes there's just too much stuff going on that you can't do everything. I once went to a workshop with a playwright and a screenwriter,
Mm-hmm.
and someone asked him, "How do you know if it's a screenplay or a play?" And he said, "You just know." And I think that's true, because I might have an idea and I think this would make a perfect play, or this is a story, or possibly a short story, or a children's book. I had another book, a children's book, that came out of a different dream that I had.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, that was a crazy one. I dreamt that my publisher in New York wanted a book about a crime fighting octopus. And I was so mad. I woke up, I shook my husband, and I
Nice.
said, "Now they want crime fighting octopus." And he turned over in his sleep, and he's always very clever in his sleep. And he said, "Well, I guess that's Sherlocktopus Holmes." And so this is, whoops, upside
Wow.
down. This is
Wow.
Sherlocktopus Holmes, Eight Arms of the Law.
Oh my God. That's amazing.
Well, I think you have to pay attention,
Yeah.
and listen to what strikes you. It's also true when you get feedback from people. uh, I used to go to all these workshops with playwriting, and people would say crazy things like, "I love your play, but let's set it on the moon." And you just think, next idea.
So, is there like an X factor to all these ideas? Because, like, you can have so many different ideas. How do you know which ones stick? Which ones like stand out?
I think those are the ones that stay in the back of your brain and knock on your door.
Yeah.
Just they do it. But also, there are other things. When I write my mystery series, I know that
Mm-hmm.
I have a book. I start getting ideas for a book maybe years in advance. So I
Hmm.
might have an idea 2 or 3 years ahead of when I start writing notes for that book. A book can be in production basically for years.
Wow.
But so, I mean, and that's different. And sometimes that's hard because you're always excited about the next idea. But luckily, right now, I'm very excited about the idea I have. And now I have so many other things that get in the way of that, things you have to do. And
Right.
that's difficult.
So do you find that like you block time? I mean, because that's the thing about being creative is you can't really like schedule it, or can you just say, okay, I'm going to go away this weekend or spend this many days or something on it, and then just like how does that creativity come up? It's not like a scheduled thing,
No,
right? Yeah.
but you do have to be disciplined,
Okay.
about it, and you do
Okay.
have to recognize that there are times that that it just feels like you're pulling on a rope, and you feel really, um, conflicted about what you're writing. Sometimes it's very, very difficult to write
Mm.
and to simply get through something, but you have to get through it. Sometimes you've put your characters in a difficult place,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to get them back, and that is tricky.
Ah.
But I've talked with another friend, and she said, we talk about when you're feeling really stuck and you're working very hard. But when I read that book, I don't know which are the hard parts and which were the easy parts. So you have to trust yourself and you have to trust your process when you are writing, I think.
Right. It's like with musicians, and writing songs, and some songs can happen in 10 minutes and some songs can take years. And
Right,
a lot of times with records, the song that becomes the biggest hit is the one that they're like, "Oh, that one's not even going to be on the record." Have you had any like of your published books and novels that you were like, "Oh, this one isn't that great," but then all of a sudden that's the one that really takes off? Like the X factor is what we call it, right? There's something
right.
about it, you can't put your finger on it, you know?
I think it's more the opposite. It's the things you think will make it that don't,
Oh,
or the
oh,
things
yeah.
you hope are really good idea. Um, I don't know how that works. That's just magic, and,
Yeah.
I don't feel like I've had that, "Oh, well, this one's not gonna make it, but boom," but possibly, with a play or 2, but,
Yeah.
that's a hard one. I think, my early education background was in, parochial school, and I think that the nuns are so good about training you,
Yeah.
introducing you to discipline. And I am grateful every day because I don't know if I would have had that if had I not, you know, been really trained under the black veiled sisters. So um,
So
it's but I wish there was an X factor in my work. I wish things would just take off. I've always worked really hard. I think the most magic thing that ever
mhm.
happened to the X Factor is one time I was at work and I got an email for this conference, and it's the Sisters in Crime: How to Sell Your Book to Hollywood conference. This was back
Mhm.
in like 2007, 8, and I thought I looked at it and I said, I can't afford that. I can't, I mean, it's just too much money. It sounds like fun. And I heard this almost like a voice in my head, and it said, Ellen, you have to go to this conference. If you go to this conference, something will happen. And I
Yes.
thought, this is insane. So I pulled out my MasterCard, I put it down, I couldn't
Yeah.
afford it. I went to this conference, and out of that, I got the deal for 2 of my books being turned into films for Lifetime.
Wow. See? It's like when intuition comes in and
Yeah.
it's manifested, and the secret law of attraction, all that stuff. It's taking action. It's that taking action and it
Mhm.
leads to all these other, avenues. So let's talk about because you've worked with publishers and you also self-publish, and you
Right.
told me this great story off camera about how it's just evolved and your thoughts on publishing versus self-publishing.
Okay, let's see. I think that, with self-publishing or independent publishing,
Mm-hmm.
there's so much more satisfaction to it, and I have so much more control over the process. And I don't normally feel like a control freak, but perhaps people would tell you I am. Maybe my husband would tell you that. But you just have the control over it. You have control
Yeah.
over the covers. And that is really something that, money can't buy.
Yeah.
Also, you have a wide variety of editors when you work with New York. I had 5 total editors. My first editor was terrific. She
Mm-hmm.
took a lot of care with the book. She bought the book, but after one editor buys the book, and that editor left, the next editor doesn't really care because they haven't bought your series. They want
Oh,
to discover the author. They don't really want authors thrown in their lap. So it was never quite the same. However, I work with my husband, who is just amazing. He's an amazing
mm-hmm.
editor, he's an amazing designer.
Mm-hmm.
And, together we work really well. And I don't cry anymore.
Oh,
Like, when you're first married and someone
yeah.
tells you, you know, they don't think you're gonna make it, well, that's kind of an occasion for tears, and now it's just this works, this doesn't work, it's back and
Yeah.
forth.
You
We
guys are a
trust each
team.
other. Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
we do, and, he's just an amazing cover designer. I guess I think I told you about the covers that I
Yes.
used to get, um,
Yes.
where they really looked like cartoons,
Mm-hmm.
and, my first book is Killer Hair,
Mm-hmm.
and, the first book in the series, I got the cover and I thought it would be sort of noir and it would reflect the story, and I got this cover and all I thought was, "Oh my god, it's Judy Jetson gets a haircut." And I just was kind of beside myself.
Wow.
Now I came to appreciate them because they sold and, they
Yeah.
were right for the times. Whoops, I lost you. Where did you go?
Oh, I'm still here.
You're still here. Okay. Oh, there you are. I'm
That's
sorry,
okay.
my
No
computer
worries.
my computer did something to
No
me.
worries.
Um, yeah. Thank you, Mercury. Yeah,
Mercury
you
retrograde.
don't believe in
Yes.
it, right? Nobody believes in it, but
Oh,
until
I believe it. I'm a Gemini. I believe in it 100%. It's I
Mhm.
mean, yeah, that's a whole other conversation which we can get into. I believe there's like this energy and manifestation and all these things going on, but we have to take action.
Yes.
We
Yeah, we
have to
do.
take action. If we just sit
Mhm.
back and wait for things, it doesn't happen. But like you
Right.
taking action going to that conference. So now let's talk about working with publicists because a lot of authors out there maybe are doing their own marketing or some are using a publicity firm, a PR firm.
Right?
What are like 3 qualities you would say you look for or that they should look for when working with a publicist?
Well, I think that, ideally, you would really have a great chemistry going on with your
Mm-hmm.
publicist.
Mm-hmm.
And if great chemistry is not the answer, then certainly clear ideas of what's expected from the writer, what's expected from the publicist. And I think the best and most important thing a publicist can do for a writer is take the burden off. You
Yes.
know, take that burden of marketing off or having to spend your creative energy on what can I do? How can I get their attention? And
Mm-hmm.
that is probably, for me, the most important thing a publicist can do is just um, help you or give you the tools you need.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times they can set up interviews or they can
Mm-hmm.
set up things for you. That takes away so much energy. And I think with normal people have a lot of energy, but I think that if you're creative, you're a writer, you have only so much creative energy and it's really hard to switch gears.
Right.
If you want to write, it's really
Excuse me.
tricky to say, I really want to, spend 6 hours today writing, but then you have
Mhm.
to cut into it. It just sometimes these duties that you have in marketing and everybody has to do it, they cut a big hole in your day and they really suck out a lot of that energy. So a publicist, if they can take that burden from you and if
Mhm.
you can get along with them and if you both understand what each part is, I mean,
Mhm.
that's to me what you're looking for.
Yeah, and I wanna talk about your video that you put up about hamburgers, 'cause it is so great, and it's just I love it. Yeah, tell for people that haven't seen this video on your LinkedIn or
Right.
IG, tell us about the hamburger.
Okay, the hamburger theory
Yes,
of writing.
yes, yes.
I think this is fun. This came from another friend of mine who wrote science fiction, and we were talking, and she said basically when somebody wants a genre book, whether it's mystery or romance or science fiction, they're looking. They don't care if it's the best or the worst. Well, they might care if it's the worst, and they might care if it's the best, but
Right.
basically, they want a hamburger, you know?
Yeah,
They want that reliable, uh, get your fix, get your reading fix, and it's like having a hamburger. So people wanna go to McDonald's, and that's great, but then, every once in a while, they'll get the best hamburger ever. It's filet mignon, it's covered
yes,
with blue cheese sprinkles, it
yes.
is cooked to perfection. Um, but the next day, when they're finished, they just want another hamburger. And as a writer, you have to remember that most people are not going to think you are in the very high art uh, business. They're not going to think you are the Michelangelo of hamburgers. You're just you're just slapping them down on the grill, and I don't slap them out as fast as a lot of authors do. But
Right.
that is the hamburger theory of writing books. So,
Yes. Now I'm getting hungry
some
for the
onions, some blue
filet
cheese,
mignon.
filet
Oh.
mignon. Yeah.
So you've been on our podcast, Sandy's show, All Things
Right.
Relax with Sandy D, and she has her signature questions. And now here on Backstage Pass, my signature question is, who is your favorite rock star?
Oh, wow. I'm gonna have to go way back and
Do it.
my
Do it.
favorite rock stars, Ian Anderson and Jethro Tull.
Yes.
Is that,
Yes.
I love Ian Anderson, and what I also love about, Jethro Tull is it has changed over the years, but it's
Hmm.
still rock solid, if you will.
He can rock a flute.
Yeah, oh my
Who all
gosh.
can rock a
Did
flute?
you
I'm sure you've seen him at Red Rocks, I'm sure, right?
No,
Eh,
Red Rocks is a funny story with did oh, I did, a couple of years ago, I saw
there was
Jethro
a
Tull.
video out, I think, where they were at Red Rocks. I'm sure you were. Oh, well, yeah.
Right, well, before I was allowed to go to rock concerts, there was a very famous concert with Jethro Tull at Red Rocks, and after that concert, where people like stormed Red Rocks and were crawling all over the rocks to get in, they banned rock concerts from Red Rocks
No.
for many years. So I, I saw him at in locations in Denver when I was much younger, and actually, we followed him. We saw him at Wolf Trap
Yep.
in Virginia
Yep.
and the DAR Constitution Hall.
Yes. Oh, I
I
love
just,
that venue.
yeah, I
Yes.
just think that's a quality rock star. I
Mm.
know other people, but they just have fled from my brain. But I love the fact that the music is still great music, and he has
Yeah.
morphed, he has grown, I love the theme album, Songs from the Woods, you know, Thick as a Brick, the early ones benefit, what's Aqualung, of course.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I guess I hope that doesn't make me sound silly or stupid, but I mean, he's putting out his gazillionth album
Yes. Yes.
now.
Quality, just quality, just over
This,
over the years. It's like the
yeah,
Stones are one of my favorites. I mean,
yeah,
and as music was changing, and everybody was going to Seattle and doing this and going here and doing that, they stayed the
right,
same. And now they're like they've been around forever. I mean, they're just their hits are like anthems. They're stories
right.
that just last for 50 years. It's amazing.
I also love Rod Stewart,
Oh yeah,
and I
yeah,
love how he went, from his songs of early days into the American Songbook.
yeah.
And I think we have all 6, so there may be more of Rod Stewart, but the early ones are still great.
Yeah.
And he, he really can sing even though he doesn't have the that voice you expect. So, and his voice is still there. So I love
Yeah.
Rod Stewart. So I guess I'm just a million years old,
No,
loving
no.
these
We're
older
talking
rock guys.
quality. We're talking quality artists, like Rolling Stones and Queen and Prince and,
Oh yeah,
oh yeah. S-
and I like Cyndi Lauper, and
Yes,
you
yes.
know,
Yeah.
girls
Yeah.
just want to have fun. Maybe we should say writers just want to have fun.
Writers just want to have fun. Yeah.
Okay.
So, what would be 3 tips you would offer to someone that is starting out? This is their first book that let's say for this scenario they're self-publishing, so they kind of like are doing it on their own, but they might be holding themselves back from releasing this because of all the misperception of all these things going on. What would be a couple things you would offer
Wow.
them? Yeah.
Um, I think that you need to find a group of like-minded writers and to learn
Yes.
from others.
Yeah.
And for years and years, I was part of a playwrights group
Mhm.
in Washington. And when I switched to mystery writing, I joined Mystery Writers of America. I belong to Sisters in Crime,
Mhm.
and I'm still a member of the Dramatists Guild, which has helped me more than any other organization. And they offer advice. And then,
Yes.
there are a couple things though that you have so many voices in your head that you need to distinguish which advice is good and
Mm.
which advice is their self-serving statement or their other people's advice. You can never um, you should never tell somebody what to do. You can
Right.
suggest avenues that they can go. And I think that this really you need to actually I don't know if the word meditate is correct, but you
Mhm.
really need to check in with your intuition when you hear
Mhm.
comments. Now, when
Yeah.
I was in my playwriting group where we had people tell you to set your play on the moon and do it in the nude, you learn which
Yeah.
comments are not worth your time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then other people can just say one thing and it's a head slap. And you just
Hmm.
think, of course, that's exactly what I wanted. Another thing is your first draft is never publication ready unless you're a
Okay.
genius. And I'm sure there are many geniuses out there, but I'm not interested in the perfect people. But you have to when you are writing a book or a play or a story, you're building a house. You're
Okay.
clearing the lot, you're
Yep.
putting up the walls,
Mhm.
and you might have your structure after your first go through, but then you have to read it again. There are certain things you know until you're finished. I never know completely what my book is about until I get to the last page. And
Wow.
then I go back and I work through it again. Some people don't believe in drafts. I do. I
Mhm.
believe in checking in with your intuition and going with what really grabs you and what you believe is right.
Mhm.
Um, and, one thing I'm really strong about is my titles. I love my
Yes.
titles and I have fought for my titles. And in New York, when you're with a traditional publisher, they may not really improve your book, but they want to put their thumbprint on it. And
Mhm.
I had these, my Crime of Fashion Mysteries have cute titles. They have plays on words. And the
Right.
first one is Killer Hair, and then there's Designer Knockoff and Hostile Makeover, and All Was Good, All Was Right in the Universe. And then I wanted Raiders of the Lost Corset. And
Oh.
and they had a fit. I had an editor and she hated it. She didn't like it. And, I had gotten advice to, just calmly explain why this was the best title for the book
Mhm.
and why I believed it was good. And I just stood my ground,
Yeah.
which apparently earned me a reputation. And I did it politely. I did
Mhm.
it nicely. I said,
Mhm.
"That's great. You're, love your recommendations like Lethal Lingerie." No, no, no. But, I said, "Yes, thank you." And I said, "But really, Raiders of the Lost Corset is the right title."
Yeah.
Well, finally, they just sent me this rather sharp email about, "We don't think it's gonna sell, and we don't like it, and you're a terrible person." And they
Oh,
kept it.
man.
It went
Oh,
into not everybody, but lots of people loved it. It went into
yeah.
multiple printings,
Yeah.
and it is really a fun book. But sometimes you have to stick to your guns.
Mhm.
And that's hard. It's hard to do because, especially when you're being leaned on by a major publisher that wants you to rename Raiders of the Lost Corset Lethal Lingerie because they were hung up on two-word titles. But I
Oh.
had to break them
Yes.
of that
Yes.
two-word title. And
Yes.
now I get to title anything I want, like my latest book. Can I show you? This
Yes.
is The Brief Luminous Flight of the Firefly.
Yes.
I can tell you nobody would accept that title today. I don't think a traditional publisher, they want something that's like two words, like Firefly dies or something. Who knows? But I'm really, I'm really convinced that my titles are the correct titles. And every once in a
Yeah.
while, I have a bad one and it kills me, or it's a lesser one. It's not perhaps the correct one. I have changed a title once and I will never do it again. I will stick with whatever I went with because
Stick
it's
with
too hard to
yeah.
change the title.
Yeah, because it's your story and you put so much into this. And
Mhm.
yeah, I think that's the thing with society and business, everything. Everybody wants the simplest thing, but it's really about, does the title describe the story and the experience that the reader's gonna get? And
Right,
sometimes you can't do that in 2 words. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't, but they shouldn't put you in a box like it has to be this way. It's
right.
really about how you feel as a writer, as a creator, the storyteller, and the feelings that your readers, excuse me, get
Mhm.
when they read it.
Yeah.
So now this part of the show is the plug section. This
Oh,
is where and your website, ellenbyerrum.com, has so much great content on it. But feel free to plug whatever you want here, send people wherever.
okay. Well, certainly I want people to read my latest book, Firefly, The Brief
Yes.
Luminous Flight of the Firefly. I
Yes.
think that the title tells you it's not just another little cutesy book. This book is set in 1943
Mm-hmm.
in wartime Washington, D.C., and it is the prequel to My Crime of Fashion Mysteries. Takes place in
Oh,
D.C., in
okay.
Alexandria, Virginia, and it covers this the time on the home front where women were really running everything or running many things. Washington was
Right.
probably one of the few places where there were a lot of men because they were coming in and out of the Pentagon. The Pentagon was brand new.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of things, troop movements were happening, and you had soldiers and sailors. But I wanted to tell the story of this character, Mimi Smith, who is the great aunt of the major heroine in my series, Lacey
Mm-hmm.
Smithsonian, and Mimi.
Hmm.
And we find out a lot about Mimi throughout the series, but I really felt she deserved her own story. And the story centers on, I know that's one of those words, centers on, around uh, this woman who is she's a lady of the evening, and
Mm-hmm.
to try and tell their story and what they were going through during the war. Mimi is not a lady of the
Okay.
evening. Let me
Okay.
She's not. She works for OPA. OPA is a government agency, the Office of Price Administration. It was abolished after the war, but it set price controls and it issued ration cards. So
Oh,
you had to
wow.
have ration cards to buy sugar, gasoline, leather goods, meat. There were so many things. Everything was regulated this way, and when I set her up in an early book that she works for OPA, I didn't realize it was like one of the most hated agencies because people didn't want the government telling them they couldn't make an apple pie because there was no sugar. And
Wow.
but they also
Wow.
investigated black market activities. So obviously, Mimi investigates a murder. However, there was a thing in the OPA is that the only crimes that they could investigate thoroughly were misdemeanors. So, they were doing all of this work, and yet it was kind of devalued by the fact that things were misdemeanors. If they uncovered something large, it would probably go to another agency, like the
Mhm.
FBI or the local
Mhm.
cops. But, through the magic of writing, I made
Right.
it so that OPA could request jurisdiction over something. Now, I don't know if that's true, but in my book, it's true. So
Yeah.
Mimi gets to investigate this murder, and I love, following her through this. And she
Mhm.
works as a stenographer, and she's asking questions, and she's getting in danger. And the local cops, don't believe her when she says, "I'm just a stenographer." And by the end of the book, she has to have a promotion to an
Mhm.
investigator
Mhm.
because her boss isn't, he gets this big story in the Washington Post after Mimi has uncovered this murder, and she reads that she's an investigator. He says, "Well, I couldn't very well tell them you were a stenographer." So it's fun. It follows
Yeah.
those struggles of women through the
Yeah.
war too.
Wow.
So it's a great book. Luminous
Wow.
Flight of the Firefly. It is in hardback. It is in paperback. It is
Mhm.
as an ebook. It can be bought through, your favorite venue, your favorite channel. But I think it's a compelling read.
Great. Well, I want to thank you again for coming on the show. I just love like your story, and Sandy just loves all the books, and you guys have known each other for a long time. You
Right? Yeah.
work together. I could get into all the DC stories and all the stuff that was going on there, but we'll save that for another time. But yeah, I just want to thank you for coming on to the show, and
Thank you.
yeah, have a great day, ladies and
Okay.
gentlemen. Ellen
Thank you.
Byerrum. All right.
Bye
Cheers.
bye.
See ya.
Bye.